When I turned 62,
At gate
I thought I'd finally
C-29,
rest.
silence
After
shattered.
decades of
A slap echoed, sharp and public, sending a 12-year-old girl in a crisp honor uniform stumbling backward. No one spoke, no one intervened. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply picked up a silver badge, its surface glinting under airport lights, and pressed her thumb to a hidden sensor. In less than a minute, Apex Airways flights at 9 airports froze. Passengers stared, whispering one question: who is she? What power could a child hold to halt an airline? They were about to discover the answer, and nothing in the skies would be the same. The echo of the slap lingered at gate C-29, louder than any boarding announcement. Veronica Hale, Apex Airways' senior flight attendant, stood rigid, her hands still raised, eyes cold. Isabella Reed, just 12, in a perfectly pressed Gold Star honor uniform, didn't flinch again. She only steadied herself, one palm against the cold chrome stanchion. Passengers froze mid-step, coffee cups in hand, boarding passes half-folded. No one spoke. "You don't belong here," Veronica said, voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of the terminal. Her eyes narrowed at Isabella's navy jacket, the gold piping along the lapel, the polished badge. "First class is for paying passengers, not costumes." Isabella said nothing. Her cheeks stung, but her voice, if she chose to use it, would not. She straightened her shoulders, silent. Near the end of the line, a man in a blazer slipped his phone from his pocket. His camera caught Veronica's voice rising, her posture tense. But the slap, the moment of contact, was already missed. The video began a second too late. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. A woman whispered to her husband, "What's happening? Is she military?" Another muttered, "She's just a kid." But no one stepped forward. Veronica's voice carried again, "You need to step aside before security is called." The girl remained still. Her boarding pass was gripped neatly in her left hand, the silver badge on her right side catching light from the terminal window. The man's phone recorded again, capturing Veronica blocking the boarding lane. On screen, Isabella looked defiant, maybe even challenging. The clip would soon be online, stripped of the moment that started it all. A gate agent looked up briefly, concern flickering in her eyes, but she quickly lowered her gaze. This wasn't her battle, not yet. Veronica leaned in closer, her tone now low enough to be dangerous. "Step away before I have you removed." Isabella met her eyes for the first time, her expression unreadable. Across the gate area, someone muttered, "Is she refusing to move?" The question hung in the air, feeding the quiet buzz of speculation. No one saw the storm brewing beyond this narrow moment. No one guessed that the child standing still could move more than a boarding line. The man in the blazer stopped recording, already uploading the partial clip. His caption would be simple: "Child causes scene at gate C-29, first class delayed." Within minutes, before the first boarding group was even called, the clip would be circulating online, without context, without the slap. And public opinion would start in the wrong place. For now, Isabella stood alone, surrounded by whispers, the sting on her cheek fading into resolve. This wasn't the end of her humiliation. It was only the first step in something much larger. In the corner of the crowded gate, Isabella Reed sat back down, posture still straight despite the sting on her cheek. The Gold Star uniform she wore wasn't for show. It was the same cut and color worn by every family member called to represent someone who never came home. Her navy jacket bore no frills, no embellishments, only a neatly polished nameplate. Reed, I. Passengers, still buzzing about the confrontation, began to take a second look. A veteran in a baseball cap squinted, recognition dawning in his eyes as he saw the badge pinned just above her heart. A Gold Star badge wasn't something a child could buy or wear casually. He leaned slightly toward the woman next to him. "That's a family rep," he said quietly. "Somebody didn't do their homework." Isabella glanced at the clock above the gate, 10:17. The flight to Washington, D.C. would board in less than 30 minutes. She was expected at the Medal of Valor ceremony at the National Mall by evening. There, she would accept a posthumous honor for her brother, Lieutenant Matthew Reed, killed in action 6 months earlier. She remembered her father's words that morning before he left for an early meeting at the FAA. "Your brother stood for something. Today, so do you." Her grip tightened slightly on the badge. A few rows away, the man in the blazer, still filming, frowned. The girl didn't seem like someone staging a scene. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't even defending herself. She was waiting. Veronica, still standing at the gate, caught sight of a gate agent typing rapidly on the desk computer. She leaned over. "Lock that down. No videos from this terminal leave our internal channels," she hissed. The agent hesitated, glancing toward Isabella, then back at her screen. At the far end of the counter, another Apex Airways employee discreetly sent a message on a secure company app. "Incident C-29. Need immediate control. Possible escalation." The message zipped across the internal network to a mid-level manager. The unspoken meaning was clear. Contain this before it reached the wrong ears. Passengers noticed the way Isabella sat, not shrinking under the stairs, not fidgeting, not even pulling out her phone. It was a stillness that didn't match her age, a calm that hinted at something practiced. The veteran in the cap stood slowly and walked a few paces closer, giving her a nod. He didn't speak, but the gesture was enough to shift the mood. The whispers changed. Someone murmured, "She's Gold Star." Someone else added, "This doesn't look right." For the first time since the slap, the balance of the crowd began to lean in her favor. But above them, in Apex Airways operations room, a message was already flashing on a supervisor's screen. Gate C-29. Suppress footage. Contain witness chatter. The stage was being set for a battle far larger than one boarding gate. Veronica Hale wasn't finished. The ripple of sympathy forming around Isabella only sharpened her resolve. She adjusted her uniform scarf, smoothed her skirt, and stepped back into the center of the gate area. Her heels clicked sharply on the tile, each step a reminder of her authority in this space. "Young lady," she said, her voice just loud enough to cut through the crowd, "you are obstructing the boarding process. You need to move to the general seating area immediately." Isabella didn't look up. She remained seated, badge steady over her heart. The quiet refusal was louder than any argument could have been. A murmur swept through the passengers. The veteran in the cap frowned, but before he could say anything, another phone camera went up. This time, the angle caught Isabella still, Veronica looming. The video streamed live to a social platform, and within minutes, comments poured in. The first reactions were defensive. "Why is this child refusing to comply?" one user wrote. Another commented, "Entitled behavior, just follow instructions." The video had no context, no history, just a frozen moment that made Isabella look stubborn. Then came a new account. No name, no profile picture, just a post from an anonymous handle, @TravelTruce247. The comment was sharp. Apex Airways staff maintaining safety. Child resisting instructions. Not everything is as it seems. The phrasing was deliberate, official enough to sound credible. In less than an hour, hashtags began to tilt. What had been small murmurs of sympathy were drowned out by a louder debate. Was the girl at Gate C-29 really in the wrong? At the gate itself, the tension deepened. Veronica folded her arms, scanning the crowd. She could feel control slipping, and she wanted it back. "Last chance," she warned, her tone low. "If you don't move now, I'll call airport security." Isabella finally looked up, meeting her eyes without blinking. The silence between them was electric. It wasn't defiance in the traditional sense, it was patience, dangerous patience. Behind them, the gate agent's phone buzzed. Another internal message. "Escalation approved. Maintain narrative control." The agent glanced at Isabella, then back at Veronica, uneasy but compliant. The anonymous account posted again. this time with a cropped still image of Isabella seated. No visible context of the slap. Captioned, "Disruption at C-29 delays passengers. Compliance saves time." Why? Out in the digital world, the narrative was shifting. And here at Hudson International, the weight of that shift pressed heavier on the girl in the navy jacket. Passengers who had started to murmur in her favor now hesitated. The air at gate C-29 grew colder, thick with speculation. Veronica sensed the moment and leaned in once more. "Step aside," she said, almost smug now. She didn't know that the tide she thought was turning would soon crash down harder than she could imagine. The air in gate C-29 felt heavy now, like a storm before lightning. Isabella's stillness broke only when her fingertips brushed the silver badge on her chest. She didn't rush, didn't make a scene. Her thumb found a recessed sensor on the backplate. A soft pulse of heat met her skin. A faint chime rang, almost inaudible beneath the terminal noise, but the badge flashed. Once blue, then an unmistakable red. The status indicator embedded along its edge blinked 3 times, then held steady. At the gate agent's terminal, the boarding display flickered. Words appeared in red across the monitor. "Aegis Protocol. Initializing. Secure clearance required." Passengers glanced toward the screen, murmuring. Veronica turned sharply, her brows knitting. "What is this?" she snapped, leaning toward the counter. The agent only stared at the display, color draining from her face. She didn't type another word. From the far end of the terminal, a man in a dark suit appeared. No airline logo, no airport ID lanyard. His pace was purposeful, his eyes scanning the crowd before locking on Isabella. When he reached her, he stopped, not in front of her, but beside her, standing at attention. He bent slightly, his voice low. "Miss Reed, protocol acknowledged. Do you require escort?" The words, the posture, the subtle dip of respect. It was the kind of interaction no civilian passenger received. Passengers exchanged glances. The veteran in the cap muttered under his breath, "That's military protocol." Veronica scoffed audibly. "What is this little act supposed to be?" she demanded. "Who did you hire to show up in a suit?" The man didn't look at her. His earpiece crackled faintly as he spoke again. "Command has been notified. Gate lockdown pending confirmation." The badge on Isabella's chest pulsed once more. On the boarding screens above them, Aegis Protocol alert replaced the departure countdown. Whispers filled the terminal. "What's Aegis Protocol? Is that FAA? Why is security here for a kid?" Veronica crossed her arms, forcing a smirk. "This is a show," she said firmly, loud enough for others to hear. "I've seen passengers pull stunts for upgrades. You think a flashing light will get you into first class?" Her voice held confidence, but her posture was less certain. The crowd wasn't as convinced as before. The man in the dark suit glanced once toward Veronica, then returned his attention to Isabella, speaking quietly into his microphone. The gate agent stepped back from her desk, hands off the keyboard. The screens above her continued to flash red, and the murmurs in the gate area were no longer whispers. They were questions that Veronica wasn't equipped to answer. And still, Isabella said nothing. The badge spoke for her. The tension in the air thickened as the red glow from Isabella's badge reflected off the polished chrome rail. She looked directly at Veronica, her voice calm but deliberate. "You should call your supervisor," she said softly, "and the FAA." Her tone wasn't a threat. It was a fact, delivered like weather, something inevitable. Veronica's lips curled in a disbelieving smile. "You've got quite an imagination," she replied. "This little light show won't impress anyone who actually runs things here." The man in the dark suit didn't move, his earpiece humming faintly. He murmured into his mic, "Protocol activated. Gate under hold. Confirming upstream clearance." At the counter, the gate agent's screen switched to a solid red overlay. Aegis Protocol. Access restricted. She swallowed hard. Far above the terminal, in the glass offices of Apex Airways headquarters, a phone buzzed on a polished conference table. CEO Marcus Granger glanced at the notification, reading the words twice. Gate C-29, Aegis activation. His jaw tightened. He pressed the intercom. Get legal. Shut down every internal channel. Remove any mention from media. Within seconds, Apex's corporate communications director was on the line to the airline's PR teams. Scrub all footage, lock staff statements, and pull anything trending before it gets oxygen. At the same moment, a series of commands raced through Apex's internal servers. All incident reports from Hudson International were sealed, marked confidential, internal review pending. Back at gate C-29, Veronica's confidence swelled. Her phone buzzed with an internal message. HQ aware, stay in control, do not escalate publicly. She straightened her jacket, turning slightly toward the passengers. See? Nothing's happening. No one from FAA is coming. She'll be moved along in a moment. In the crowd, the murmurs began to settle, the earlier shock slipping into uncertainty. A few passengers checked their phones, expecting to see headlines, but nothing new appeared. To anyone watching from outside, it seemed like the moment might fizzle. That the tension at gate C-29 would dissolve into a quiet removal, maybe a misunderstanding swept under the rug. Isabella sat quietly, her eyes on the terminal clock. She didn't look worried. Her fingers rested lightly on the badge, its pulse steady. Veronica mistook the calm for defeat. "Looks like your little drama is over," she said smoothly. "Let's not waste more time." But above them, in a secure FAA channel, a different conversation was taking place. And the silence in the terminal was just the pause before a much louder shift. The stillness at gate C-29 fractured with the sharp buzz of an emergency alert. A chime pulsed overhead, and the boarding screens blinked from red to black, then flared into a stark warning. Aegis protocol, federal lockdown in effect. The crowd stirred. This was no normal delay. At the same time, 9 airports across the country lit up in cascading sequence, their control rooms flooded with the same directive. Suspend all Apex Airways operations pending review. Departures were frozen mid-boarding. Planes already taxiing were ordered back to the gate. In Seattle, a gate agent at Apex's flagship terminal frowned at the flashing message. "This can't be right," she whispered. But the order had FAA clearance codes. There was no override. In Dallas, an operations officer flipped through a compliance binder in panic. 9 hubs suspended in under a minute. Back at Hudson International, passengers' phones buzzed with push notifications from flight tracking apps. Apex Airways flights grounded at multiple airports. Murmurs turned into open conversation. Heads swiveled toward Isabella, who sat perfectly still. Veronica's phone pinged again, this time with a terse command from HQ. "Hold position. Do not engage further. Situation under legal review." She frowned, scanning the room. The confidence she'd worn like armor was beginning to crack. Then came the twist no one at Apex had anticipated. At the far side of the terminal, a man holding a stabilizer rig walked backward, camera trained on gate C-29. He wasn't filming covertly. His live broadcast badge was pinned openly to his vest. Global Aviation Network, live. On his stream, tens of thousands of viewers watched the flashing Aegis screens, the still figure of Isabella in her uniform, and the nervous shuffle of Apex staff. The comments scrolled at a blur. "Why is Apex locked at 9 airports? Who is the girl?" "That's a Gold Star badge." Within 5 minutes, the live feed was clipped, mirrored, and translated into 3 languages. The footage was impossible to scrub. In the Apex Airways executive suite, Marcus Granger's phone rang. The caller ID was unmistakable. Office of FAA Compliance. He didn't answer. Not yet. Back at gate C-29, the man in the dark suit stepped forward slightly, his voice steady but firm. "Miss Reed, FAA Command confirms lockdown is in effect. Additional units en route." Passengers began recording openly now, no longer hiding their phones. A young woman whispered to her companion, This isn't about a seat upgrade. This is bigger. Veronica felt the eyes on her and forced a brittle smile. Just a misunderstanding, she said weakly. But her words fell flat against the growing hum of an audience that was no longer convinced. The hum in the terminal broke when a new voice rang out. Calm, authoritative, amplified through the airport intercom. Attention! Gate C-29 is now under federal review. Aegis clearance is active. Please remain in your current positions. The words silenced the last fragments of doubt. Passengers turned in unison toward Isabella. The man in the dark suit stepped aside as two new figures approached. FAA Security Division, their badges glinting under the terminal lights. One of them stopped directly in front of Isabella, saluted sharply, then turned to the crowd. For the record, he said clearly, this is Miss Isabella Reed, daughter of Admiral Nathan Reed, Deputy Director of Homeland Aviation Security, and designated Gold Star representative. The reaction was immediate. A collective intake of breath swept the terminal. The veteran in the cap bowed his head. Passengers began whispering furiously. Words like Admiral, Homeland Security, and Gold Star rippling through the air like aftershocks. Veronica froze. The name landed heavy in her chest. She had heard it before. At a mandatory training session she had barely skimmed. Her mouth went dry. You, she began, but the words stuck. Isabella remained silent, her gaze fixed ahead. In a corner of the terminal, the Global Aviation Network's live stream caught the moment perfectly. Isabella seated, calm, flanked by federal officers, while Veronica stood a few feet away, pale and still. Online, the clip exploded. Comments shifted instantly. She's Gold Star. Apex is finished. Admiral Reed's daughter? This just went federal. The feed wasn't just being watched by the public. It was being monitored inside FAA headquarters. And there, someone else's name began to surface. Deep in an internal FAA chat, an investigator flagged a troubling note. Cross-check incident. Similar complaint last year. Hudson International. Filed by Gold Star rep. Case dismissed. Reviewing sign-off. Anderson, FAA Ethics. Anderson's name was well known. A mid-level FAA official. He had quietly closed an embarrassing complaint against Apex Airways the previous year. Now his past decision was glowing under a new spotlight. Within minutes, Anderson's phone was ringing off the hook. His assistant whispered from the doorway, "They've linked you to C-29. It's all over the compliance channel." Back at the terminal, Veronica tried to recover her composure, forcing a nervous laugh. "This is all a misunderstanding. I didn't know." No one moved to support her. The FAA officer spoke again, his voice carrying finality. "We are securing statements from all relevant parties. Apex Airways Senior Operations Team has been notified of pending inquiry." Passengers didn't need legal jargon to translate what they were witnessing. The power had shifted entirely, and this was only the beginning. The mood at Gate C-29 shifted from shock to something colder, inevitability. The FAA security officers stepped forward, one on each side of Veronica. "Ma'am," the taller one said evenly, "you'll need to come with us." Veronica's jaw tightened, but she didn't resist. Her eyes flickered to the crowd, perhaps searching for someone to defend her. No one did. Passengers stepped aside as she was escorted away, the veteran in the cap shaking his head slowly. The Global Aviation Network's live feed followed her exit, capturing the tense walk past the Apex Airways counter, her heels clicking on tile in a sound that felt final. Within Apex headquarters, the emergency meeting room buzzed with voices. The words "federal review," "liability," and "protocol breach" were thrown around like grenades. CFO Leonard Sloan leaned against the conference table, his phone in hand. His eyes weren't on the commotion. They were on a secure chat with an FAA contact. "Need to contain this. Penalty reduction possible?" The reply was curt. "Depends what you're willing to offer. Public optics are bad. Need leverage." Leonard exhaled slowly, typing. We can fast-track certain training compliance contracts to FAA-approved vendors, quietly. Back at Gate C-29, the FAA officers now address the passengers. Apex Airways Flight 218 is delayed pending federal clearance. Alternate arrangements will be provided. The statement was formal, but the subtext was clear. This flight was not leaving on time, and it was Apex's fault. In the crowd, more phones buzzed. News outlets were picking up the live stream. Headlines began to spread. Apex Airways under federal review after Gate C-29 incident. In the Apex boardroom, Leonard received a follow-up. "We'll see what we can do. No guarantees. Keep media quiet for now." He turned to Marcus Granger, the CEO. "If we play this right, we can contain the worst of it. Maybe keep this from turning into a full-blown grounding." Marcus's expression was grim. "We're already bleeding. You better hope your contact delivers." Meanwhile, Veronica was escorted into a secure room near the terminal's restricted area. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, just a stark chair, a table, and a silent camera recording everything. She was left alone to think about the moment that had brought her here. At Gate C-29, Isabella remained seated, calm, as if none of this surprised her. The veteran approached, tipping his cap in quiet respect. "They're not walking out of this one," he murmured. But deep inside Apex's corporate tower, Leonard Sloan still believed there was a way out. He just didn't realize that every quiet deal he was making was being logged, and the record would soon surface. By morning, the ripple from Gate C-29 had turned into a wave that Apex Airways could no longer steer. What began as a single incident had evolved into a sprawling investigation that crossed borders and triggered compliance reviews in multiple jurisdictions. The first blow came from the European side. At 6:42 a.m., an official statement from the European Aviation Commission was released. Effective immediately, Apex Airways' preferential landing slots in Frankfurt, Charles de Gaulle, and Heathrow are suspended pending the outcome of the FAA investigation. The suspension meant millions in lost revenue each week. Inside Apex headquarters, the news landed like a direct hit. Marcus Granger slammed the printed statement on the table. "Frankfurt and Heathrow? That's half our premium routes in Europe." CFO Leonard Sloan tried to keep his voice even. "We can negotiate. We'll offer compliance guarantees, maybe." His phone buzzed. A new message from the European Commission's liaison. "No negotiation unless public apology issued directly to Isabella Reed." Leonard read it twice, his pulse ticking faster. They want a public apology, not just to the family, to her, by name. The room went still. Public apologies were an admission of wrongdoing, and an admission Apex had spent the last 24 hours trying to avoid. In Brussels, the Aviation Commission's press conference was already underway. A spokesperson stood at a podium, flanked by the EU flag. "This is not about one passenger. This is about a culture of disrespect that cannot stand in international aviation. Miss Reed's treatment was unacceptable. We expect corrective action." The live feed cut across networks in Europe and was translated into English within minutes. Back in the US, media outlets ran with the headline, "EU demands apology to Admiral's daughter amid Apex scandal." At Gate C-29, passengers who had been part of the original incident now watched the fallout from their phones. The veteran in the cap shook his head. That girl's silence did more damage than any shouting match could have. In the FAA offices, an investigator updated Admiral Nathan Reed. "Sir, Apex has until end of day to respond to the EU demand. If they refuse, Heathrow will terminate their access entirely." Nathan Reed didn't smile, but there was the faintest shift in his tone. Then they'd better start drafting the right words. Meanwhile, in a quiet conference call with the EU, Leonard Sloan promised a good faith statement. He didn't know yet that the Commission had already drafted their own version, and it would be leaked to the press by noon. For Apex, the storm wasn't over. It was accelerating. By midday, social media was a battlefield. Hashtags tied to Apex Airways trended in opposite directions. Stand with Apex versus #Justice for Isabella. Comment sections under every aviation-related post were filled with arguments. Some defended the airline. You don't know what happened before the clip. Apex is being unfairly targeted. Others stood firmly with Isabella. Gold Star family treated like this? Disgraceful! Apex's PR team leaned into the divide, quietly amplifying supportive voices while silencing critics where possible. Leonard Sloan felt a flicker of hope, until a notification shattered it. At 2:13 p.m., an unfamiliar account appeared on the trending feed. At Hudson Witness. The account's only post was a 42-second video, captioned simply, "Full context, Gate C-29." The video began not at the standoff, but at the moment of impact. Veronica Hale's open palm striking Isabella's cheek. The audio was crystal clear. Gasps from passengers, the metallic clatter of a coffee cup, and Veronica's voice saying, "First class is for paying passengers, not costumes." The next 30 seconds showed Isabella steadying herself, bending to retrieve her badge, silent. The contrast between her composure and the aggression she endured was stark. Within minutes, the video was everywhere. News anchors replayed it in slow motion. Hashtags shifted violently. Justice. For Isabella surged past hatch stand with Apex in under an hour. At Apex HQ, PR screens lit up red. Marcus Granger's voice cut through the crisis room. "We're done spinning this. Damage control won't work. This is evidence." Leonard stared at the screen, his earlier optimism gone. Who leaked this? In a small apartment overlooking the Hudson River, a man closed his laptop. He was the same passenger in the Blazer from Gate C-29. His tweet read simply, "The truth matters." Back in the FAA offices, Admiral Reed received the footage on a secure channel. He watched without expression, then forwarded it to the European Aviation Commission with a single note. "This should answer your question." Public reaction turned. Politicians who had stayed silent began issuing statements of support. Military advocacy groups condemned Apex. Celebrities amplified the video to millions. At Gate C-29, passengers who had witnessed the slap in person now spoke freely. "We saw everything," one woman told a reporter. She never raised her voice, not once. By evening, the question on every news chyron wasn't whether Apex was at fault. It was what the consequences would be. The court of public opinion had delivered its verdict. Apex had no more allies in the crowd. The FAA press hall was filled to capacity. Rows of cameras, flashes, and reporters waited as Admiral Nathan Reed stepped to the podium. His uniform was crisp, but his voice carried not as a father, but as the Deputy Director of Homeland Aviation Security. "This is not about one gate or one airline," he began. "This is about dignity in the skies. The Aegis Protocol, designed to protect Gold Star families and safeguard against systemic abuse, will now become a standard across all federal aviation partners, effective immediately." Behind him, the FAA administrator stepped forward, flanked by representatives from international aviation boards. Today, 23 nations have agreed to sign the International Aviation Ethics Accord, she announced. Compliance is no longer optional, it is policy. On a large screen, the list of signatories appeared. The United States, Canada, Japan, the UK, Germany, Australia, and more. The European Aviation Commission spokesperson signed in live video from Brussels. Applause rippled through the room. Back at Apex Airways headquarters, the mood was grim. The accord meant mandatory retraining, external audits, and a permanent ethics oversight board. Leonard Sloan muttered to Marcus Granger, "This is more than a fine. This rewrites how we operate." At Hudson International, passengers who had seen Isabella at Gate C-29 watched the broadcast on their phones. The veteran in the cap smiled faintly. She didn't just win her fight, she changed the rules for everyone. Midway through the press conference, Admiral Reed paused as an aide handed him a note. He read it quickly, then looked up. "One final announcement," he said. In recognition of her composure, integrity, and the catalyst role she played in restoring these standards. Miss Isabella Reed has been extended an honorary invitation. He stopped, allowing the room to quiet. To serve as an honorary aviation ethics advisor by Pacific Sky Airlines, one of Asia's largest carriers. The room erupted in murmurs. It was unusual, unprecedented even for a civilian, much less a 12-year-old, to receive such an offer. At home, Isabella sat in her quiet room, her badge placed on the desk. She hadn't heard the offer yet. Her father's voice played faintly on the TV in the living room. In Tokyo, Pacific Sky Airlines CEO confirmed the invitation. "This is not a role of authority," he clarified, "but of honor. Her perspective reminds us what the system is meant to protect." The symbolism was unmistakable. What began as humiliation at Gate C-29 had now reshaped global aviation ethics and placed Isabella's name among the architects of its future. The National Mall was hushed except for the faint rustle of flags in the spring breeze. Rows of chairs faced the stage, filled with military families, officials, and veterans. At the center stood Isabella Reed, the Gold Star badge pinned above her heart, the medal for her late brother, Lieutenant Matthew Reed, resting in her small hands. Admiral Nathan Reed stood a few paces behind her, his expression stoic but proud. When the announcer read Matthew's name, the crowd rose in silent respect. Isabella stepped forward, received the medal, and bowed her head, not for the cameras, but for her brother. There was no speech, no dramatic moment. When the ceremony ended, she stepped quietly off stage, the way she had walked through every moment of the past week, silent, steady, unshaken. At home that evening, Isabella sat at her desk. The Gold Star badge she had worn through the storm at Gate C-29 lay on the table for a long moment before she placed it carefully in the top drawer. She closed it gently, as if sealing away both the power and the burden it carried. She didn't need to look at the news. She knew the protocols had changed, the policies rewritten. Her part was done. Her father paused at her doorway, watching her for a moment. "You handled yourself with more strength than most adults I know," he said quietly. Isabella only nodded. The camera flash of public life had faded, replaced by the ordinary hum of home. She preferred it that way. Far from the ceremony, at a training center inside FAA headquarters, another quiet scene unfolded. In a small community service office, Veronica Hale stood behind a counter, her hair pulled back, a plain FAA service vest over her shirt. She greeted walk-in visitors with measured politeness. The placard on the desk read, "Community Ethics Rehabilitation Program, FAA Oversight." It wasn't prison, it wasn't exile, but it was a reminder, visible to every staffer, that arrogance had consequences and change required humility. In the break room, another employee whispered to a colleague, "She was at Gate C-29, you know." The other only nodded. No one mocked her now. Back in Isabella's room, she looked out her window at the sky. A plane cut across the clouds, its engines distant but clear. She didn't feel pride in what happened, only relief that perhaps the next person in a Gold Star uniform wouldn't have to fight for a place they'd already earned. Her thoughts were quiet, her conclusion simple. Strength isn't in shouting. It's in knowing when silence can speak loudest.